G'day, I'm Ted Jedinak, international educator and podiatrist, helping shortcut health practitioners' paths to getting even better clinical results. I've got a fabulous interview for you today because you're going to hear a truly inspirational adventure of a fellow foot fixer from Ontario, Canada, and she's done some pretty amazing things in her career so far. The achievements and obstacles that Krista's overcome will provide you, dear listener, with ideas and insights that you can apply in your own clinic. Krista Prevost, chiropodist, is my guest. Now, I first met Krista in 2011 when I ran a foot mobilisation training in Toronto. And I remember at the time Krista feeling a little bit like she was all thumbs, but I could see the light bulb come on a few times, so I knew she was well on her way. Then in 2013, Krista was on the last flight before the Toronto airport was closed due to a snowstorm. And just 32 hours later, she landed in sunny Adelaide, 34 degrees, ready to be fully brainwashed in our FMT clinics in our incubator training. Now, that's commitment to your craft, isn't it? So, so in time, probably in the time that I've known Krista, she has evolved brilliantly into a great MSK practitioner, developed her business, and had a baby. Now, I'm not sure I can claim credit to all of those events, but yeah, maybe 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And so, look, I'm really grateful to have Krista on the other end of the line. So, Krista, thank you for taking my call.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's indeed my pleasure, and I know it's going to be the pleasure of all of our FMT family as well. So, Krista, please tell me, what is the Krista P story?
Yeah, so I sort of fell into chiropody as a fluke or by accident, but I got my undergrad in kinesiology, and I was looking to specialize in something health related after that, not really knowing what specifically. So I did a gap year after university, and I bummed around South America for 9 months. And I met a chiropodist from New Zealand, actually, and I just sort of put a little bug in my ear, and it just sort of got me thinking about that as a career. So after I got back to Canada, when all the money ran out, I started looking up chiropody schools, and there was one in Canada, in Toronto, because I did my undergrad in Calgary. So I moved out to Toronto for chiropody, and the rest is history.
So when did you graduate, Krista?
So I graduated, when did I graduate? I graduated from the Michener, so the chiropody school, in 2007.
Okay, great. So you've now celebrated your 10-year anniversary, or about to, yes. Great. So, my goodness, all right, so a decade has gone past. How did you come to be so involved in manual therapies for foot and leg conditions?
So I feel like I was always looking for something like foot mobilization without even knowing what it was. Because the first few years that I was practicing chiropody, I always had this feeling like something was missing. And I was just becoming increasingly frustrated that it seemed like the only recourse, no matter what the foot condition was, any sort of biomechanical related problem, was just dealt with orthotics. And it just didn't resonate with me that was the one and only way to manage these foot problems. So I felt like I was searching for something without even really knowing that it was out there. And it was only after I saw you did the FMT level 1 course in Toronto, and it immediately piqued my interest, and I thought, okay, this could really be something cool. And I was hooked from that very first weekend. I was like, yeah, this is going to be my thing. This is going to be this is going to change the way that I practice. I knew right away.
Okay. And so has it? Like, how is your clinic different now compared to what it was before we met?
Yeah, massively different. Well, first of all, I didn't have my own clinic at the time.
Okay.
I was at the time working for somebody else. But so first of all, I think that by developing my FMT skills, I think it was a big part in giving me confidence to open up my own clinic, because I felt like I had something, well, it was a combination of feeling like I had something unique to offer.
Yes.
And at the same time, I just felt like the way that I wanted to practice was just, was becoming no longer just in line with the way that it was done at the place that I was working. So it was a combination of those two factors. That was what really sort of got me out the door.
All right, nice.
Yeah.
So your clinic now, Krista, how would you describe it in relation to how much general treatment work, how much biomechanical work? What's the typical week look like?
My patient load is I would say at least 50% FMT now.
Okay.
And I feel like it's been growing and growing. And I feel like I've got a lot of, I really like doing the unique and different stuff. I like having a wide variety of things. So I feel like I do a lot of other unique things too. Like I do toenail bracing and I do Keriflex nails. So I already have these really unique therapies as it is.
Yes.
But FMT is definitely sort of the big one and the biggie. And I feel like that's what my clinic is starting to be known for, and that's what people are starting to sort of seek out my clinic for.
Okay, terrific. Yeah. So, Krista, can you describe what you do differently now in relation to a biomechanical case? Maybe I could arbitrarily pick Zach, because I think he looks like an interesting case that you had to work with.
Yeah, Zach. Yeah. Big buff hockey playing Zach.
Okay.
Very, very Canadian. So I think, just having the FMT training has radically changed how I approach my biomechanical cases. So whereas in the past I would have maybe, so Zach was a fairly run-of-the-mill plantar fasciitis case. He'd been suffering with some heel pain for quite some time and wasn't getting good results. And of course, it was interfering with his ability to play sports and be as active as he'd like to be.
Yes.
So in the past, I probably would have just plunked him in a pair of orthotics and maybe done some modalities like cold laser therapy, something like that, or maybe some taping, and then just hope for the best.
Okay.
Often cases like that, it would be frustrating because you can't really stick orthotics in hockey skates very successfully.
Okay.
So I guess just fundamentally having a different understanding of the foot and what kind of dysfunction is happening in the foot is what really is at the heart of how I practice differently.
Okay.
So just so that's really at its core, understanding just having that different framework and understanding that viewing foot dysfunction in terms of like subluxation patterns.
Yes.
As opposed to just something like the root model, like just rear foot to forefoot relationship.
Yes.
I feel like the subluxation pattern models and the beam theory, your beam theory just makes much more sense. With Zach, I basically got him on a program of biweekly foot mobilization visits, starting with six visits initially, combining that with your exercise protocol with the stretching and then strengthening and then stabilizing exercises, and we got phenomenal results. Basically, Zach said that within the first 2 to 3 visits, he was almost 100% pain-free.
Wow. Okay.
So just like right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. And so,
which isn't every patient, but it's really nice when it happens every so often, and it feels great and you feel like a magician. So so we got amazing results, and as far as I know, his foot pain has stayed away.
Great.
Yeah.
So he had seen other practitioners before, and is that where, because he had orthotic therapy too?
Yeah, and he just wasn't satisfied. And I think he was also, part of that dissatisfaction was, I think often the approach is with other practitioners, especially other chiropodists. It's like, well, use this orthotic and I'll see you in a year for the next time you get casted. So there's really not that same level of follow-up.
Okay.
And so I think that's where he was dissatisfied in the past, was that he was just like, really, you're just going to give me this orthotic and that's it?
Okay. So you mentioned, Krista, that you were seeing him twice a week for a number of weeks. Now, what was Zach's opinion of that? Like, that's a pretty big commitment and a somewhat tall order to ask of a patient. How did you go with that?
Well, I think it's so long as you lay out your rationale for why it's necessary. So when I'm explaining sort of the really, and speaking in terms of like the root cause of their foot problem. Yes. This is of course stuff I got from you, Ted, about talking about how we need to address the underlying root cause of why they have this foot problem, and not just, hone in on just this one little structure, like we're going to heal your plantar fascia while ignoring whatever else is going on with the foot. Yes. So we're avoiding these Band-Aid solutions, and we're looking for those deeper, the why. Like, why is this foot becoming painful? Why do you have recurring plantar fasciitis always on this one side, or that sort of thing? Yes. So I think when I'm laying out my treatment plan, and I'm explaining why he's got this foot problem, why perhaps it's recurring and it hasn't responded to treatment so far, and really what's physiologically necessary to change in order for this foot pain to go away and also stay away, then they get on board. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think if I was to just jump right in and say, okay, you've got this foot problem, you're going to have to come back for this many visits, see you in 2 days, they might not be as keen. But once you explain that it's in their best interest and there's a rationale behind it, then they get on board. So it sounds like you've spent a bit of time and effort in the education process so that your patients understand what they're doing and why they need to do it. That's great. Yeah. Well done. So, Krista, you also told me, or you gave me some background on another patient, Susan, who we've talked about Zach with the kind of the plainest, loose bag of bones type of foot structure, but Susan was at the other end of the scale. Tell us about Susan. Yeah, so Susan had a cavoid foot type, which I'd say in general tend to be a little bit more challenging to treat. Okay. And she was a little bit older. I can't remember exactly how old she is, but I want to say she was in her 50s. Okay, well, very young. Yes, quite young, I see. And yes. And and she'd been sort of, although she was very active and very health conscious, she did a lot of Pilates and yoga and really took great care of herself, but she'd been saddled with these sort of, in her bad feet for almost as long as she could remember. Right. So she had a lot of forefoot pain and sensitivity. She had really bad corns on her forefoot, and just generally always had this problems with real pain and tightness in her feet.
Yes.
So, with Susan, it wasn't a miracle cure. It took a lot of work, and it was a lot more hard fought, but what worked with Susan is that she could really tell that when she stuck with the program, it came in for her therapy visits and did her homework, like did her foot exercises, she could really notice incremental improvements in her feet. So, so we managed to slowly but surely get her feet into a much better, more comfortable place.
Great. So with that cavus foot type, that is, I agree with you that they're often tough, hard work physically to create changes with. What would you have done pre-FMT for someone like Susan?
Oh, I'm trying to think back. Probably, again, like stuck her in an accommodative orthotic, which is, and just kind of crossed my fingers, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe a few just general stretches. I feel like before I took this FMT programs with you, I feel like my exercise prescription was pretty weak and very kind of vague. I'll just say that.
Yes.
So I find a lot of practitioners can be kind of vague with their exercise prescription.
Okay.
Just stretch your legs, stretch your feet, and you really have to be really specific to get results, I think, and also to get the patients on board too and motivated to do their homework regularly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Krista, what have you noticed when you do map out a care plan that involves regular FMT, an exercise routine? How willing are patients? How willing do you find them to fulfill or follow through with your instructions?
By and large, I have to say that most of my patients are pretty motivated and on board. I haven't run into too much resistance or pushback. There's obviously going to be those patients that, for whatever reason, just just drop off the face of the earth on you. But for the most part, once I I feel like once they get to your clinic in the first place, they've already made the biggest step is that first step.
Yes.
So just the fact that they've showed up at your clinic, it shows that they're taking their foot problem serious, and it's a big enough problem to them that they're motivated to do something about it. Okay. So I feel like once I explain just the rationale and the reason why this treatment is the best bet for them to fix their foot problem in a meaningful long-term way, then by and large they're on board. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, great. But I know, people being what they are, is no doubt there's going to be challenging cases and things that don't quite go to plan. Tell us about Maggie and what happened with your wonderful client with such a gorgeous name like Maggie.
Yes. Oh, Maggie was a tough one. So poor Maggie came in to see me, and she'd had some bad like arch pain and heel pain for a while. I want to say it was many months. I think it may have been over a year. I don't have my notes in front of me, but I know it was a very long time that she'd been just suffering, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And it had actually gotten to the point where she had to leave her work. So she was basically working as a caregiver. So, helping her clients that were unwell themselves, dress themselves, bathe themselves, and run errands for them. So a physical job. And she just could not do it anymore. Her feet were hurting her so bad. So she was really motivated to get back on her feet as soon as possible. And when I was doing my initial exam with her, I thought she was going to be a slam dunk. She was just displaying that classic subluxation pattern where the medial column was just jutted anterior to the lateral one. Pes planus. There was lots of restrictions, like around her talus and her navicular. So I thought, oh, okay, this is the type of foot I can work with here.
Yes.
So I proposed that she initially come in twice a week for 3 weeks. We got to work on her feet, and it was really painful for her, even having me do any of the treatments, which a little of that is not unusual. So I was just thinking, we'll tough through it initially.
Yes.
But it just wasn't progressing. It just, nothing was going along as expected. And even the exercises that I was giving her, she felt was stirring up her feet. So after a few visits, when we were doing a bit of a review visit and taking stock of where we were at, she had not improved an ounce.
Right.
Like, not a bit. So I just felt very horrible and dejected about that. And and poor Maggie was just distraught, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, so we just hadn't. Yeah, so she was just one of those odd cases where just nothing went as expected.
Okay. Can you explain that? Like, do you have a reason why things didn't respond to your treatment?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't. Honestly, I can't see that. And there are those patients where you think, well, we'll give this a shot. We don't know which way it'll go, but it's worth, and you communicate that with your patients. Be like, I'm not entirely sure that your foot problems are biomechanically related, but if you're willing, we can give this a shot. And she didn't even seem to be one of those cases. So sometimes you just don't know. Maybe there was something going on with her feet that I just couldn't see. Maybe there was, and I don't know, the way I see it is that the human body is so complicated, and there's not just the musculoskeletal system at work. There's the nervous system, there's the metabolic system, there's so many things going on that, of course, I don't fully understand. So a lot of factors at work. Yeah.
So what did you end up doing with Maggie? Did you change tack? Did you use any other treatment options?
Yeah, we ended up transitioning her to some cold laser therapy.
Okay.
Which is always a tough sell when you've got a patient who's been unsuccessful for your treatment. So that can really erode trust in you as a practitioner. But I was just really upfront with her. I said, look, I fully expected that we would get much better results, and we didn't. If you're willing to try, we can transition you to a different type of treatment altogether. It's cold laser therapy, and it takes a completely different approach. So if you're willing to try, let's do that. And we're getting slow but sure improvements that way. Okay.
Well, that situation alone, you must have already established a high level of trust for Maggie to continue with you, because I agree, it's highly likely if things don't go to plan that usually people just end up getting so pissed off they turn out and don't come back. So well done. And I think it highlights obviously the connection or the rapport that you establish with your patients. So no, that's sounding fabulous.
Yeah, it's so important. Yeah,
indeed. Yeah. So Krista, I want to ask you about your palpation skills, because often most podiatrists or chiropodists are not taught, or they don't have their palpation skills as part of our undergraduate training. So how was that journey for you?
Yeah, well, that was pretty wild. It's kind of like learning another language. Yeah. Because like you were saying, you hit the nail on the head when you said that on that first course that I took, it was like I was all thumbs. And like, yeah, I thought maybe neuropathic thumbs at that.
Oh, harsh.
But yeah, so there's a leap of faith involved when you're taking when you're learning FMT. You just have to trust that, okay, right now it just feels like a foot. I can't really feel any discernible things other than that. But as you learn this language, it's almost like this whole other world reveals itself to you. And thinking back, I think my palpation skills have definitely come leaps and bounds. I can't remember if it was the very first course I took from you or the second one, but I remember asking you, so Ted, like when you're examining a foot, like can you tell when you're mobilizing a foot if there is dysfunction or if it is a healthy joint or what's going on there?
Yes. And
you said, yeah, you could tell. And I said, well, how can you tell? And I remember what you said, and it totally stuck with me. You said explaining it is like trying to explain to a person who's never ever tasted a banana, trying to explain to that person what a banana tastes like. And I think I got such a kick out of that, but it's so true.
Yes.
Like you can't really describe, but sure enough, it just sort of comes to you. And so that's what's been really fun for me as I've been going through this and getting more and more practiced and more experienced, is that I feel so much more confident when I'm feeling feet and examining them. Like,
yes,
I could just, it's almost like and it actually feels like a conversation that I'm having with the foot, where that foot is telling me like, okay, hey, Krista, there's something going on here, something going on there.
Yes.
And that's been such a cool thing to just develop that skill.
Oh, that's a gorgeous description. I've not ever heard that before, but yes, having a conversation with the foot.
It really seems like it, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. So, Krista, what did you do from a specific action perspective to build your palpation skills? Did you say, okay, that's it, I'm going to practice on everyone, or can you remember what you did to get that moving along?
Yes. Yeah, you just have to do it. You just have to dive in head first. And what I started doing is every single patient that came through, whether they came in for a wart or a wound or heel pain or what have you,
yes,
I would just ask that patient, okay, I'd like to do a little bit of assessments just to see how to examine your joints. And would you mind if I just examined a few of your joints here? And they inevitably said, sure.
Yes.
And I would just do a very basic sort of mini mobilization where perhaps instead of doing like multiple repetitions as I'm mobilizing a joint, just sort of checking each joint.
Yes.
I think it just develops a database of feet in your brain to be able to compare and contrast. And then all of a sudden you have hundreds of, when you feel that cuboid, your body's felt hundreds and thousands of other cuboids. So you know what to compare it to.
Yes.
And then so on and so forth.
Oh, yes. Oh, well done.
You just have to do it. You just have to, even though it feels weird and awkward and tedious and like it's nothing's happening, you just have to have faith and you just have to do it.
Nice.
And even though at the beginning you'll feel very incompetent, you're not incompetent, you're just inexperienced. So
nice.
Give yourself a break, but do the work. Do the work, get the experience yourself, and be curious about feet and see where that curiosity takes you.
I feel like I'm speaking with Yoda now. Some very wise, profound words.
I see that being true, because I remember that was my one question that I had with myself when I was learning FMT initially was like, well, I know Ted can do it, but he seems like next level. Maybe he's just like this magical whiz. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it too. So it's so I can see that being useful, just to be like, oh, ordinary folk can get there too.
Yeah, for sure. Krista, I want to say on behalf of the FMT family, thank you very much for your generosity and willing to share your experiences, but also your heartfelt honesties. There's some real gold here. For those of you listening, you're not aware, but it's probably approaching something like 10:30 in the evening for Krista. We did have our video on before, and I can tell you that Krista was all set in her gym jams and a glass of wine. So I'm going to say, Krista, thank you very much. I'll let you make the most of those pajamas now and say thank you. Really appreciate being able to catch up with you and your chat, and thank you for sharing your experiences and wisdom. I think it probably good for everyone. It was. Oh, geez, that was bloody useless, but anyway. No, thanks, Krista. It really is fantastic. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and also, Ted, honestly, thank you for sharing what you know, because you're probably shaped and changed my career more than just about any other factor out there, and I'm very grateful for that, because it's definitely made my career much more satisfying as a practitioner, being able to help my patients this way. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very touched about that. Oh, thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate that. It's I know one of the joys I have is being able to share from my experiences, and it is also always one of the most fulfilling things for me personally when I see the impacts that you now have on those hundreds and thousands of people and patients that you're going to be looking after now and well into the future. So, no, definitely it works both ways. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Great. Well, thanks, Krista. I'll let you loose and until we meet again.
All right, fantastic.
Thanks.